Hey, folks, welcome to Debating the Nature of the Gamma with Robert Stark. Now, Robert and I got into a disagreement over on Facebook on one of Forney's threads related to that podcast that Forney and I had done, The Gamma Mail, with Daniel Freeberg and Melissa Mazeros. And so we are here to debate this topic, and we have Pill Eater as our moderator.
Hi, guys.
And so there's the introduction. Take it away.
Well, about myself, I'm Pill Eater. I have a YouTube channel at youtube.com/PillEater and a website at www.asianarianism.com. I am the co-host of The Stark Truth with Robert Stark. Robert Stark has been a huge podcaster of the alt-right since the days of 2010 on Voice of Reason Radio Network. It's how I discovered Paul Ramsey and Greg Johnson and Keith Preston and some other well-known guests, and Robert Stark has had that tradition for alt-right people. However, I will say that Robert Stark is also a unique individual, and I can totally understand why he'd be against the kind of gamma or manosphere, even Rouge V type of philosophy. But I'm here just to moderate and just to put into any advice or wisdom, but this is usually a conflict that Robert is having with Aurini right now, so yeah, I'm just here to just moderate and I actually help Robert do this. So yeah, so things will be interesting. I can say that much. And Robert, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Great.
So yeah, this was pretty much, I left a comment on Forney's Facebook page, and this was in response to the podcast they did. And I've been looking over this whole gamma concept, and I've been following Vox Day's blog for quite some time, and I've been following Matt Forney's blog since going way back to Amalafida, but I listened to the podcast. It was about a certain individual, and my comment wasn't so much on the whole drama with that because I'm not really familiar with the particular case, but I just think that the whole concept of this hierarchy thing that Vox Day put out, I just think that it's there's a degree of truth to it, but a lot of it's ridiculous.
Well, okay, let me just... so, regarding the person that we were all discussing, the cat's out of the bag as to who that is. The conversation was about the personality archetype, okay? It was halfway a therapy session for Freeberg and Mazeros, given that Forney and I have dealt with this personality archetype before. So let's not worry about who the specific individual is, whether or not they're a gamma. We're talking about the archetype. So now regarding the hierarchy that Vox Day has put together, the alpha, beta, delta, gamma, lambda, sigma, etc. Listen, I will be the first to say that if you are spending your entire day worrying about where you are in the hierarchy, that is as shit. You know, at the end of the day, what you need to do is get your damned act together. You know, if you're going to break down every interaction you have throughout your day, you're going to be all over the damn spectrum. Okay, you're going to be sigma for one moment, you'll be alpha another moment, you'll be gamma. It's more the point of the hierarchy is noticing that there are these different personality types. Very much not an alpha male at all. Okay, I have a buddy that's an alpha male. Me up the wall when this son of a bitch tries to give me advice. Because alpha males give the worst advice in the world. Because they are very, very naturally good at what they do, so they never have to spend 5 minutes thinking about what they do. They give you'll often get advice from the gamma male, yeah, just go do that, it's easy. And it's like, yeah, buddy, it'd be easy for you. And that's not me. I'm yeah, I guess, like, I don't like identifying myself on the chart because it's self-congratulatory and autistic. But, you know, I'm a sigma male, if anything. You know, I'm thoughtful, I'm a lone wolf, I do my own thing, etc. Okay, and obsessing over whether you're a beta or an alpha or a sigma, like obsessing over that is just plain unhealthy. Nonetheless, can figure out what your dominant archetype is, then how to hack that. Like if you're beta, you know, and I've beta friends, you know, if you're always trying to be the alpha, you're always going to fail. Be happy. And in fact, even if you managed to convince the whole world that you were alpha, you would be miserable because you just wouldn't fit in there. Same way, like myself, I can be a leader if I need to be of a large organization with a whole bunch of idiots. But as a sigma, I either prefer being a lone wolf or I prefer having a very small team of people I can trust rather than a bunch of babies that need their assets getting wiped. So I don't know. So I'm not honestly not entirely clear on what the disagreement is. So there's my opening statement. You go, brother.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I agree with you. Yeah, I think it is overly autistic to obsess about where you are. And even a lot of those different type of blogs. I mean, but you go over to Roosh V site, they say, oh, the alpha this, beta this. And then Vox Day has this very intricate description of personality types. But Vox Day, I just take a lot of it. He just has all this vitriol towards gammas. I think gammas and sigmas exist on the same spectrum, basically, pretty much. I think they're people who stand for some level of aristocratic individualism. They are deep, tend to be thinkers, introspective, have their own unique visions of the world. And I guess to describe those other terms, but my main agreement with Vox Day is he's saying that gammas should try to he has this term called delta, which is just, I guess his definition of that is just sort of an average, like, schlub, I don't know. But he's saying gammas should try to, like, get over themselves and become just kind of average schlubs instead of trying to better themselves to be sigmas. So I don't really have, it's more, my disagreement is more with Vox Day. I don't really have any personal beef with you per se. I just wanted to start this as like a catalyst for a discussion.
Okay, so let me again address a few things you said. First of all, Roosh B forum, am I being alpha? Or Heartiste, is this alpha? When they're saying alpha, what they basically mean is don't be a faggot. Okay, so if I'm sitting there whining about, you know, like, oh man, I lost my job, you know, they'll say stop being beta. What they're saying is don't be a faggot. Okay, like get your shit together, stop whining, etc. So it's not a very useful, right? If you're saying be alpha man and you mean don't be a faggot, that's a great thing to say. If you're saying be alpha according to this very complex, you know, sociosexual hierarchy, that's less useful. So let's utterly dismiss the usages that we find on the Roosh B forum and on Heartiste and elsewhere, because they use very, very loose definitions usually. Now, to briefly address the delta, as I comprehend it, the delta in Vox Day's hierarchy is sort of like the mathematician, like the really geeky guy he's a complete introvert, very not social, kind of a little bit weird and awkward, but it's not because he's a weirdo, it's because he is an intellectual guy. So he doesn't play on the football team at all. The alphas and the betas and the sigmas are all playing on the football team, whereas the deltas are in the chess club. And there are, I mean, there's a path to success there as well. Okay, yeah, they're not going to be the star of a movie, but deltas have a lot of success in life. At least that's how I understand it. Now, debate itself, our disagreement. I understand it's regarding the gamma. You know, this is something I've spoken a lot about because, unfortunately, I've known a lot of gammas. So, in my experience, gammas, like what Vox Day is talking about and what has rung very, very true with certain individuals I've met in my own life, is gammas are people that they are rather, they're either intelligent or they've dedicated a lot of time to mastering one particular thing. But they're losers. Nobody likes them. Girls don't like them, but they've convinced themselves that they are an alpha. This because they are an alpha that no woman wants to be with, because they're living a lie. They become the most toxic and destructive people around. They might put on an air of nobility, of intelligentsia, but they are the most anti-intellectual, venal, pathetic little monsters. They're garbage human beings, and they really need to get over themselves.
Well, that kind of gets to the definition of genuine losers, situational losers. The rewards, I think that there are a lot of different ways to measure people. People on the alt-right are really obsessed with HBD and IQ, and that's certainly a factor. But I think American society has this strong anti-intellectual streak, and especially people who are very introspective and put their emphasis into intellectual pursuits rather than doing the so-called, like, quote-unquote normie kind of stuff. And some of these individuals that would be described as quote so-called gammas, some of them are brilliant people, and they go on to be successful. But some people just don't really mesh with the society they're in. So yeah, some of these people do become bitter and possibly antisocial. But I don't really. The problem with putting this label of a gamma on these people is it really depends their situation. Are these people are they lazy, or are they people who are hardworking, intelligent people who aren't getting the respect that they do from a certain society? So it really depends who this person is specifically.
Okay, I think you're conflating a few things here. Here's the thing: if I showed up at some sort of rap battle concert, I would be very low status in that room. Okay, I would still have the Sigma type of disposition in life, but in that room, I'd be the lowest status male in that room. Now, here's the difference between me and the gamma, is that gamma would walk into a room where a rap battle is happening, and he would, because he's the alpha, mind, he's going to pull out his dick and start trying to measure it against everybody else's, even though, like, the standard of quality over there is how good you are at rap. And the gamma doesn't do any rap, but he still needs to be the alpha around everybody. And again, there's the situational dependent, where you are in the hierarchy of this place. Like, if I the VFW, at first I'm lowest guy on the totem pole because I'm brand new. But over time, because I'm not Mr. Gamma pretending to be an alpha, I'm going to earn my place in that community. The gamma never achieves success because the gamma is constantly obsessed with being the alpha in every situation. They have a lot of skill and talent. They should be successful, except they're constantly stepping on their own dick because they're too busy trying to prove that they're better than everybody else, as opposed to actually doing something useful. Very, very destructive people. They attack their allies. They constantly undermine themselves. They live in a fantasy world. And even if they have a high IQ, even if they do have some sort of useful skill, they are just such toxic individuals that nobody, like within 6 months of meeting them, you're like, what the hell is wrong with this person? They actually go out of their way to self-destruct their own projects. Very, very toxic, very, very destructive people. They're not truly intellectual, because the true intellectual wants to be challenged. It's like an alpha intellectual wants to be challenged because he loves fighting, not because he's concerned about being right. Me, the Sigma is more concerned about being right, and he doesn't care whether he's cool or not. This is true, and fuck y'all if you don't like it. I've got a hot chick and a cool dog, and I don't need the rest of y'all. The Gamma is obsessive and fights with everybody, even the people who agree with him.
So yeah, you're talking about this the extreme end of a personality type. I get what you're saying. People who take it to the extreme. Some people just are you saying that they're born with these psychological problems, or are these people who, over maybe say years and years feeling alienated and dissed, they develop these psychological problems over time?
See, I mean, like, we could talk to the ends of the earth about what causes it, and free will, and addiction, and all of this, and I mean, like, that's a serpent eating its own damn tail. I don't know what causes the Gamma. I know that people that are getting out of Gamma go through the exact same process, and they all recognize what they used to be. You know, honestly, what I would say, Stark, from what I've read of your stuff, you are describing the Delta. Okay? You're describing, like, let's be frank, this is a very venal society, this is a very anti-intellectual society, as you pointed out. This is a very charisma. This is, what have you done for me lately? You know, so, like, if you try and sell somebody, like, well, I have a really good idea, but it's going to take me 6 months to work on it. Boring. Whereas you say, hey, I've got a shiny brand new iPhone. Oh, yay, give it to me. It's immediate gratification. So, yeah, very personality-based, very much a society where alphas are doing a lot better than anybody else. Personally, I would include the omega sexual degenerate, but that's a whole other thing. Like, the scam artist salesman. Whereas if you're a Delta, you know, if you are, if you were part of the chess club in high school 80 years ago, you would have been inducted into the Manhattan Project. And by the way, those guys in the Manhattan Project, you know, they, all right, like the Delta wasn't constantly kicked in the nuts his whole life. And, you know, like the Delta, you know, 60, 80 years ago, would go out to the speakeasy, and there'd be jazz playing, and he could have an intelligent conversation about jazz, and chicks would be impressed. You go to the bar, and they're playing Move Your Butt Cheeks. So the Delta looks at them and says, what the hell? I'm going back to my chess game. So I think, like, for some reason, you are conflating the Gamma and the Delta. Okay, the Delta actually has something to contribute to society. A total geek, and right now society doesn't want much to do with them. The Gamma, a disgusting poser that just constantly needs to one-up everybody around him. He's even if he's smart, he's a know-it-all. Okay, whereas people that are actually like the Alpha will argue with you because he wants to argue for the sake of arguing because he's the Alpha. But if you win the fight, he'll admit it. Wants to argue for the sake of the argument and doesn't really care who wins. The Beta kind of just goes along with whomever's winning, and the Delta really isn't so interested in arguing as exploring all of this nerdy shit that, you know, builds buildings and computer infrastructure, etc.
So we're kind of talking about these problems. Yeah, I get what you're saying. So you're saying that the gamma is just some delta kind of taken to the extreme. I was getting the kind of the impression that his definition of that is just kind of like your average schlub. That would be more his definition of a beta, or just kind of that's just described just kind of the conformist masses.
Well, if I understand, and by the way, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Would you mind muting your mic? It might be, I don't know, it might be on my end, but if you could mute your mic when you're not speaking, really, thank you. I don't mean to be curt. Anyway, as I understand it, so basically you've got it's mostly a spectrum. You've got alpha all the way down to gamma. So the betas are just lower tier alphas. If there's no alpha around, one of the betas will crawl into a cocoon and morph into an alpha. But down at the bottom, you've got the gammas that are just, they are the losers of society, okay? The betas get invited to parties, just not the center of attention. The gammas are sitting at home in their mother's basements playing World of Warcraft. But they know that they're sitting at home in their mother's basements playing World of Warcraft. The gamma is... Wait, I'm getting all the damn terms mixed up, aren't I? I mean, this is what happens when you get too autistic. Is a person that's in denial. Okay, the gamma is a guy that... Okay, like the female equivalent of an alpha is... Like, the alpha is the captain of the football team. The female equivalent is the head of the cheerleading squad, who's also, got straight A's. The betas go for all the girls below that, right? They kind of sort themselves out. The gamma, his female equivalent is the prostitute. The failure of a woman is what the gamma goes after. These are the guys that subscribe to cam whores and say, "Oh, I love you so much," and donate $50. And she's like, "Oh, that's the biggest donation. You're the session boyfriend." Okay, and he's proud of himself for visiting a prostitute. All right, the gamma is the guy that creeps on every girl at the bar and then brags about alienating all these women and chasing them out of the bar because he's a creepy weirdo. The gamma is the male feminist who is better. The alpha is just a rapist. He just creeps on women and would take advantage of them if he was given that chance. The gamma is in absolute denial about the fact that he is a complete fucking loser. And because he can't admit, everybody else can admit their failures. It's like, I told him, like, dude, you really shouldn't have done that. You fucked up something good there. And he didn't like hearing that. But he acknowledged it, and we're still friends. And the same thing, he pisses me off sometimes. I'm like, dude, like, fuck off. My life is hard. Stop telling me what to do like it's easy. But we're still friends. Emma, if you give him good advice, he hates you with a black passion of 1,000 introverted sons. Because by giving him advice, you implied that you were better than him. And nobody is better than the gamma. He fucking likes them.
So what do you think there are political solutions to these problems that we're talking about? I think the other issue that you're going to talk about is the left-wing faction of the alt-right, because you and Matt Forney have actually been discussing that lately. And I remember following his original blog, and he's gone in definitely a more right-wing direction. But what are your thoughts on the kind of left-wing faction of the alt-right? And that includes, if you want to talk about like socialist and also homosexuals.
Well, it's not so much there's a faction. It's that the alt-right no longer has a reason for existing. I'm not saying that it shouldn't exist. I'm saying that the alt-right lacks a purpose. Recently, where I summed it up thusly. I think this is a good metaphor for just the adventuring party in Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, like if you're going to set up an adventuring party, I mean, if you're actually like if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, why are people in your adventuring party? Well, because you were sitting at the pub and everybody wants to play a game, and so some old man came and gave you a damn mission, right? The same thing with the video games. Okay, it's like these people are already predefined as potential NPC party members. All right, there's no suspension of disbelief. Realistically, if you want to set up an adventuring party, you need two things. One, you need a damn goal, and two, you need a whole bunch of gold so that you can pay these sons of bitches, and because you're paying them, you can tell them to behave properly. And you need a dragon's hoard. And so for the alt-right, you know, what was our dragon? Our dragon was getting Trump elected. And what was our goal? All of these delicious YouTube Benjamins that we were making. Dragon's been slayed, and the YouTube Benjamins have disappeared. There is nothing left to the alt-right. There's no purpose, no goal, aside from being a social club. You know, I was just watching that movie, The Mist, and this one guy, he's like, our species is fundamentally insane. You lock a whole bunch of us up in a room, and we split into groups trying to rationalize reasons to kill one another. And that's what's happened to the alt-right. Is there's no reason for it to exist. It's devolved into a social club, and so now we're trying to find reasons to fight one another. And so the alt-right proper has embraced this very extreme and fundamentally nonsensical version of white nationalism, which is it's just endless purity spiraling, where everybody's a hypocrite, which is why it's all Jews leading that part of it, even though they hate Jews. And the alt-right has defined itself by not being that, which means they're also dependent upon that thing existing for their very own definition of themselves. And it's just this big spiral of attention and posturing and so on and so forth. A whole bunch of who gives a shit.
Yeah, I'm someone who's been kind of loosely affiliated with that scene since the beginning. I mean, I've interviewed Richard Spencer and Greg Johnson several different times, but I would say I describe myself either left-wing of the alt-right, or I guess I would prefer to say alt-center. But I would like to see more, I call it like a smart socialism, and I think this would address a lot of these problems we're talking about, because you were saying the reason our society is so screwed up is it puts these special emphasis on superficial characteristics, and then you get these intelligent people who become disenfranchised, and I guess that some of them turn into gamma males. But I think the solution to all these problems is to institute a basic income, but to have some kind of a favoritism towards people with higher IQs. And I think that will obviously, I mean, our culture is dysfunctional. It's hard to fix a culture through political stuff because politics is downstream from culture. But I do think instituting a basic income and socialism with granting favoritism towards high IQ individuals would solve a significant portion of those problems.
But wait, doesn't capitalism naturally favor people with high IQs, and socialism naturally favors people with low IQs? Isn't socialism just a transfer of wealth from high IQ people to low IQ people?
Well, what you were saying earlier is our current economic system, like the business world, the kind of individuals you're describing who succeed on these superficial traits. I mean, there's plenty of people that are totally worthless, but they date attractive women and they make a lot of money, even though they don't really contribute any great intellectual ideas or have any kind of grand aesthetic vision for society. So I think there needs to be socialism, but just to identify who has the best intellectual ideas and put those people at the top, either by supporting them financially, and then for lower IQ people.
Let me address that. What I was saying is that our degenerate culture rewards the stupid and charismatic. However, our economy rewards the intelligent and psychopathic. This is late-stage capitalism, greenhouse capitalism. The people with high IQs and no morals whatsoever do very, very well in corporate America, or on Wall Street, or in the educational institutions, or in media, etc. If you go out and to any of our cultural events, which are, we used to have real culture, now all we have is let's get hammered and high. The low IQ, high time preference, charismatic individuals with big dicks succeeding. Okay, so we actually have the extreme version of capitalism right now, and the extreme version of socialism. Okay, and this, a lot of what this boils down to for me is the problem with both sides is lack of spirituality, lack of morality, lack of self-development, lack of purpose, lack of goal. The alt-right is, why does the alt-right exist? Because it exists, because the SJWs exist. And why do they exist? They exist to oppose white racism. So let's all be white racists to oppose the SJWs. Everything has become a Jungian shadow of everything else, because none of us are actually trying to live for anything. We're not trying to sell or stand for anything ourselves. We're just trying to get a lot of likes on social media. Media is fundamentally no different than being the guy at the nightclub with the big dick. All right? Except instead of inches on your pecker, it's likes on your tweets. And as a civilization, we need to start, as individuals, we need to start getting our act together and standing for something bigger than all of ourselves.
So that goes back to the whole thing. Politics is downstream of culture, and a culture is much more difficult to change. You have all these subcultures forming, and people who, whether it's the kind of far left SJWs, the alt-right, and I don't think we can really, the whole sort of generic culture in the middle, I don't think that we can transform that, but I do think people do need to form their own subcultures. I don't know if the alt-right is a one, but just try different things, see which ones work out better. But then
right, you're talking about Asian Aryanism, Robert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now you're back.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that the last thing we need right now is another goddamn online movement. Because all these online movements, they're nothing but social clubs. Okay? A real society. Be hanging out with young people and old people. You're going to be hanging out with like workers and capitalists. A real society, you are going to be giving to it and you're going to be getting something back in return. Whereas all these internet societies are just fake societies to puff up. And with the state of things right now, the last thing we need is another bloody movement. What we need is some investment in our own life, honest self-reflection as individuals. And quite frankly, I've spent far too much of my life trying to counsel people that have addiction problems, psychological problems, reality-denying problems, and a counselor can help, but at the end of the day, if you don't want to overcome your problems, you're not going to overcome your problems. Okay, there is no magic fucking pill out there. And I will tell you, I see it constantly. There are so many damn people in this society that are happy being addicted, happy being enslaved. There are so many people in the alt-right that are happy sending out Pepe memes. Okay, they don't want to make, they talk about the white race and they talk about the whatever, or they talk about civic nationalism. None of them care about that. What they care about is W's. Don't look at what the person says they believe. Look at what they're actually doing, and that will tell you what their God is. And tell from the way these people are behaving, most of them, their God is a blind idiot God with the face of a sarcastic frog.
Well, yeah, that's just using humor. I mean, Pepe is just a humorous meme. I don't think there's anything. I mean, no one has a problem with Pepe unless they're, except for the people in the mainstream side are weirded out by Pepe, but it just kind of, he can be anything. He represents kind of dark nihilistic humor, but he can represent a victory. He's just Pepe is just a symbol, and also a good use of humor.
Well, I've got a problem with Pepe because, you know, what starts out as irony very, very quickly becomes sincerity. And so hoisting up this flag of an ironic nihilistic fraud that is everything and nothing, water and exists on the land, that starts out as a fish and then becomes a four-legged creature, lifting up this avatar of contradiction and nothingness and saying, I'm just doing it ironically, well, irony becomes the new sincerity. And at that point, well, Christ, man, do a few rails and sleep with the tranny, why not, and say that she's your waifu. That seems to be the way things are going.
Well, Pepe gives people inspiration because if Pepe can be anything, then they can become anything if they subconsciously adopt this persona of Pepe. And I think I've seen a lot of individuals, and they were these like total dweebs, and they were involved in the whole Kek movement, and now a lot of them, they've sort of they've adopted this new self-confidence by basically becoming Pepe. And I don't know if it's like some weird esoteric Kekism, but I mean, I'm not being silly. I think it has had a psychological impact on empowering people.
See, on the one hand, what you just described, you know, Pepe can be anything, I can be anything. That actually is the mentality of the gamma male. I say I'm an alpha male, even though I can't get laid to save my life, and I've been thirsting after the same slut on Facebook for 4 fucking years, even though she stood me up for 3 dates so far. And I wish I was making that story up. That's a real person I just described. You know, that person thinks they're an alpha male. Because they say they're an alpha male, therefore they must be an alpha male because my word makes it true. Now that said, you know, you listen to Jordan B. Peterson, you listen to, I can't remember his first name, Pagano. I've been supposed to do the podcast with that guy for ages. And they talk about the positive aspects of this. Yes, you need to dive into the darkness. Yes, you need the chaos. Okay, there's the cycle of the seasons. There's the yin and the yang, and you do need to dive into that chaos. You need to go to a new place where you can be something else, and then but then you need to re-emerge into the light. You leave high school and go to university, and you decide, well, you know, I'm not going to be a loser like I was in high school. High school feels like they're a loser. All right, like all but 3 people leave high school feeling like they were the biggest loser. So they go to college and they reinvent themselves. You know, they buy a leather jacket. They, I don't know, they get a mohawk, or they start wearing like dress shoes all the time, or whatever it is. And they go and reinvent themselves. I can be anything. But then you need to emerge from that primordial darkness again and be something. The thing is, most people want to stay in the primordial darkness. You know, it's like, yes, right now I'm a drug addict, but I could stop whenever I wanted. I'm just not going to.
Oh, Pilliter is back on. He wants to talk about Asian Arianism.
No, well, first up, I think Aurini is saying a lot of good things about this, and I have to agree that I have to admit myself that I had a blog post, and it was published.
Is this the one in praise of beta males?
Exactly. And I called it the Very Proud Beta Male, and that actually got some controversy on many sides, and close friends who are from the white nationalist alt-right types, the manospheres. And I basically wrote that as a piece and to describe the being proud to be beta male. And at the very beginning...
Was this in response to the whole Chad nationalism meme?
I think so, because as well that there, but the point is that it's exactly what we're talking about in hierarchy, that it's might be well that I myself am a beta and would have to follow. It's okay to be a beta and write that, and as well as some of this why I have criticisms for the alt-right right now is I wrote another article a few weeks ago about, I called it the cult of the extroverted, where there's basically this ideal that, yeah, no, all these online things is a social movement to get high and get drunk. You have these, especially women appearing in the alt-right, that is making it more like a feminist soccer mom fascism club. And it's really annoying.
Can I talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
Now, I'm not naming any names, all right? Because I don't want to fight with anybody. And there are some very good, principled, intelligent women. That said, 9 times out of 10, when a woman's being political, it's just a slightly classier form of prostitution. And the guys that are so eager to hear a woman say something that I said 5 years ago, or Aaron Clary said 5 years ago, or Matt Aurini, or Bruce B, or whomever, you turn on the Weather Channel and you want a pretty girl telling you the news. Hey, that's fine. We all like pretty girls. Woman, to feed you your political opinions, guess what? You're a fucking gamma male, and you are the problem movement, which I'm thankfully not a part of anymore. Or maybe I am. I don't know. I'm not disavowing. I just don't care to associate with people like that.
Well, for one thing, I just want to add in, I might have differences with Robert Stark, but last year, before I graduated college, the biggest black pill I took was Aaron Clary's Worthless, about how the college degree was worthless. And a lot of stuff I had to awaken. Getting Bachelor of Plat Economics, I have to say that Aaron's work really opened my mind. It's just until recently, in the past few weeks, a few days ago, I was at the alt-right Washington, D.C. rally and saw Richard Spencer. Some of my Identity Roper friends gave me Rushfi's Bang. And at first, when I was 21 years old, I thought it was shocking and appalling. I thought it was a rape manifesto. And I said all this stuff about it, but now when I'm finally reading it a little bit mature, I find it there's a lot of great wisdom in that. In fact, today, I was just out the park and I saw this pretty hot red-haired girl, and I went up to her, had a talk, and got her number. And maybe that esoteric meme magic, like Stark has to say, or maybe it's really game that's working. And I have yet to learn more from Rush V's wisdom. And I understand that there's this whole backlash in some parts of the alt-right of Rush being some pervert, but look, the game wisdom is real, and I would say that maybe have gamma personalities, but at least I can say I'm beta. Maybe I can make steps to the self-improvement of myself. And I do think a lot of this stuff is wisdom. It's just a lot of it is being buried because we live in a very liberal society, or even, I guess, cultural Marxist place that's just terrible on that. So
here's the thing. If you can admit you were wrong about something, you're not gamma. Okay, the gamma, it's the male borderline, it's the narcissism, but they never admit they're wrong, and they never forget a slight. I'm actually toying about writing a children's book called The Gamma Never Forgets. Okay, because they remember their slights forever. Something I wrote earlier on the Rush B forum is that with all of this alt-right versus alt-light stuff, I'm not really taking a side on. Okay, I'm kind of saying that both groups are being idiots and assholes, but, I'm not denouncing anybody, whatever. There's a third group that Voxday defined. And these tend to be the people that are the alt-right Christians, but these people focus on. Self-discipline and self-improvement, trying to, respecting, educating oneself about and admiring the accomplishments of our ancestors, and trying to set a better example for other people. And the alt-West is, commenting on the alt-right versus the alt-light, but they're not arguing with anybody there. And see, that's the thing, is I would fundamentally include Rush B in that alt-West. His books about picking up chicks, All right, which is like it's like such a stupid thing, picking up chicks. Okay, but so is fixing a damn car. Picking up chicks is probably more important than fixing a damn car when you get right down to it in the grand scheme of things. His books aren't one of these PUA seminars that are promising you that, man, I'm going to teach you the secrets to get your, you just grab them by the pussy and no. And like here's how you approach them. Here's some basic tactics you can use, and like reshuffle them around to suit yourself. But at the end of the day, women want you to approach them. So like nut up, go approach some girls, stop being a pussy, and like you know what? You're not being a honorable traditional man if you're too much of a pussy to approach women. Okay, like the virtue and mean between the two extremes. All right. So being a self-righteous prude who has never done, like, I've never gotten angry at anybody. Yeah, that's because you eat soy all the time. That's not virtuous. All right. Being pissed off but restraining yourself is virtuous.
What do you think about the whole critique of homosexuals? I was also listening to that. I disagree with that because there's speculation that these like certain prominent figures are, whether they're homosexual or not, and maybe some of them are, but I don't really say that as irrelevant because heterosexuals have traditionally devoted all their energy to family, and I would recommend checking out James O'Meara's book, The Homo and the Negro, because he talks about kind of the role of the homosexuals in Western civilization, and because they were not tied down by family, they tend to be, I don't know if it's maybe genetically, there is some genetic factor that homosexuals are more creative, I don't know, but they have traditionally been the ones who have created the culture and been kind of the cultural elites.
Well, in what way am I answering this bloody question? Is sexuality disordered? Yes, it's gravely disordered. In fact, I'm becoming more convinced as time goes on just how gravely and how dangerously disordered it is.
Well, what about in ancient Rome and Greece? That was, at the pinnacle of ancient Western civilization. Ancient Greece was probably the most homosexual society imaginable.
And they also embraced slavery, and they also, exposed children. And there's a lot of great things you can learn from the classics, but our civilization, well, we're going through a down phase right now, but our understanding of morality has become far, far superior overall. There's a constant sine wave, but the direction of that sine wave is overall going in an upwards direction.
Robert, I think the book you're referring to is Will Fellowes' Passion to Preserve Gay Men as Keepers of Culture, which James J. O'Meara did an article on Countercurrents arguing that gay people are the keepers of culture.
I'm referring actually to both. Well, his book, The Homo and the Negro, is about that. And then
exactly, too.
The other book. And actually, it was interesting when James O'Meara says, the quote-unquote, the Negro. He does reference... James O'Meara, I think he does have he could have some anti-black views, but it's not so much meant explicitly as an anti-black way, but he's using the sort of the quote-unquote Negro as more of a kind of a symbolism of how American society kind of glorifies like the loud, obnoxious oaf as opposed to like the great intellectual. And he's using the homo as a symbol for the great intellectual. But I can't really speak for James O'Meara. That's just kind of my interpretation of his work. Are you familiar, Aurini, or are you familiar with O'Meara?
I am not, but I will say that every single supposed homosexual from history that achieved great things, I haven't seen an ounce of evidence that they were homosexual. Okay, in fact, if anything, it was the widespread of homosexuality allowed them to be more intimate with other men. Alexander, very, very intimate relationship with his his best friend, one of his top generals. I forgot the guy's name right now. And now they want to say that he was a homosexual. Well, no, he was attracted to women. There's ample evidence of that. They try and say the same thing.
Most people don't want to admit this, but there's this whole Kinsey scale. Like, only a very small percentage of men, maybe 30% of men are purely straight, 10% are purely gay, but everything in the middle, there's a spectrum. So most people are in somewhere in between being fully gay and fully straight, if you're familiar with the Kinsey spectrum.
Well, Kinsey's statistics that you just quoted were based upon criminals. He did interviews with criminals and then said this is the normal American public. All right, but so first of all, I don't trust any of those damn statistics. Kinsey was a corrupt piece of slime. He had pedophiles molesting children, gathering stats on how they molested children for years. Nothing to stop that. So Kinsey was a monster with an agenda. Now, that said, grant Kinsey that he's right. Like, if you look at lots of guys go to prison and they've never slept with a guy before, and then they're in prison for 5 or 10 years, they sleep with guys. So let's for sake of argument say that everybody is potentially bisexual. 70% of people are, that 90% of people are. The thing is, the rest of us are saying, what should I do with my life? What is productive with my life? And, you know, when you get right down to it, the person that dedicates their entire life to going to the club and doing blow and picking up a different 21-year-old girl every weekend, guy, when you get right down to it, is just as nihilistic and destructive as the homosexual. The thing is, the rest of us, even the people that do have same-sex attraction, that are tempted by homosexuality. The Orson Scott Card had a great character in the Bean series of novels, and he was a homosexual, and he started making all these like babies in his test tubes. But then he grew the fuck up and said, you know what, what the hell am I doing with my life? Okay, this is not life. Life is taking a wife and raising children to be better than you were. Some test tubes. It's not picking up an HB9 every other weekend. It's not pursuing endless hedonism and all of that. I have a lot of sympathy for people that feel same-sex attraction. Okay, and yes, human sexuality is very, very fluid. Okay, more fluid than most of us want to admit, because it's always being shoved in our faces. But as soon as you start making everything sexual, you start eroding intimacy and preventing truly cathartic relationships. Like, if everything is sex to you, you never feel love. Sex with everybody, you never get to have a family. So homosexuality, like, it's a terrible thing if somebody's tempted by that, by same-sex attraction. I feel bad for them. Okay, that's their cross to bear. A homosexual life is not a virtuous or meaningful life. So I really worry about those people. And we should not be posting them as our leaders.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that because I can relate totally, because I'm not going to lie, a few years ago I joined the gay club at school because I thought, hey, because I can't get up girls, might as well be gay, because I might as well be a sub and somebody else be a dom. Truth of the matter is they're all decadent, ugly, nothing like strong, tough men at all. And even if they were strong, tough men, it shows you that men have a higher sexual energy. Because you can't get laid with girls, there's a gay club, and go ahead and join Tinder and say you're a guy looking for other guys. Guys are going to hit you up more often, and you're going to be the girl. And it's very strange how that on the internet dating works. It's just a bunch of horny men saying, you know, if I can't have sex with women, I might as well just get naked with another guy and jerk off. And if there's a butt, I can put my dick in it. But accordingly, I think most young people are just being fed this through media of pro-homosexual stuff, and then make a conclusion and say, well, I must be gay. And then turns out most of the people who think they're gay are virgins, never have sex, or that they you know, they think these things and then they get with a girl and then they realize that they're not gay, just like with the Orson Scott Card example. Personally, I'm not gay. I do flirt with the gay aesthetic because I'm just fascinated by it. But as you said perfectly, I don't find of it. There's some confusion here. There's definitely this media twist saying that you're born gay, when really that's just a 5%, 3% thing happening. And you're right, most people who are gays are actually criminals. In fact, that if you're gay, you're most likely going to rape little boys and do other things because there's no balance. It's like if an older guy goes after a 21-year-old girl, might as well be an older guy going out like an 8-year-old boy. And so they never address the pedophilia issue. You know, sooner or later, it's going to be the crazy left going to make pedophilia. You know,
I would liken it to addiction, where, like, in theory, people can be addicted to anything. Okay, they're more likely to be addicted to methamphetamine and cocaine, but they can be addicted to anything, and at the end of the day, it's the same bloody problem. And like a huge part of this thing, when it comes to men and women, higher when they are in the presence of a virile male. Around a virile male, they're generally not going to feel sexual arousal. Now, for guys, we feel sexual arousal when we're around a fertile woman. Okay, and women are just automatically fertile by being 20 years old. And so you're going to feel more sexual arousal. But there's been so much healthy masculine instinct, so much of this, you know, white men are evil, men are rapists, etc., that guys have been so suppressed that the whole thing starts becoming. So yeah, it's a very sick and broken thing. And I actually really feel for young men nowadays, because with all of the propaganda, all of the pornography, all of this, there's going to be a lot more young men being tempted into same-sex attraction. Afraid of approaching a woman, they're etc. So yeah, it's an absolute mess.
Do you think there's been an increase in the incel phenomenons from, say, 20 years ago?
Oh, without a doubt whatsoever. Absolutely. We are destroying people. We are using, well, we're using sex amongst other things to destroy people, to infantilize people, to keep people dependent and desperate and obedient. You know, Brave New World covered how you can do this quite excellently.
No, I totally have to agree with Brave New World is a great book, and I'm actually quite worried that, you know, this brings back also to the woman question, you know. Not to sound sexist, but it's this ideal of, you know, women getting the movement, and say, like, girls like Roaming Millennial are completely shallow, don't have anything to say, but talk about how she's Eurasian and how beautiful it is, and she has just a nice face to come on. But it's not really anything big. It's motivated by sex. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of points on this that it is definitely a world run by sex, and I have to agree on that too. I mean, certainly that it's sex sells, and that you can easily liberate, quote unquote, liberate people through sex. But I believe in the, I guess, like you said, that Christian character. That's and that's why I originally wrote, you know, something of the proud beta bale on my website about Asian Aryanism. But yeah, there needs to be this character who's a role model of good, and not like a decadent person into like shitty forms of decadent culture. You know, it's like the Antifa. What
is your Asian Aryanism addressing? How is your Asian Aryanism addressing these issues?
Well, personally, it's an art project, and maybe I certainly wrote it in an emotional state, and I continue to do so on my website. But I guess the issue that, hey, if there's someone gay, or if you can't get with the bimbo cheerleader, your best chances are probably to get with the nerdy Asian girl that clings on to you. And whether you might consider that, you know, lower than beta or some gamma or enforcing of that, the only thing I'm really arguing for is a healthy, aware nature, and not to promote it. Then again, I could be accidentally promoting it. I think there's just ways to living the good life somehow. And I think, but yeah, I have to agree with Aurini that sex does run everything into a terrible, Brave New World state. And I love, personally, Brave New World.
Do what it is. It boils down to never trust an addict. And what we have is a generation of sex addicts. They're sex addicts partly because they can't get laid to save their damn lives. And they're sex addicts partly because they won't stop playing with their damn dicks.
I'm not going to lie myself, but the Asian Aryan Discord and Twitter and forum and guests are basically all ex-porn actresses and horny guys that jerk off to Asian girls. And I always think to myself, I wonder if I can harness this energy and basically make it good. But it seems very bleak. I totally get that ideal of strange addiction,
Those who want to get better will, and the best thing you can do is set a good example for other people. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't want to get better, but over the long term, over the long timeline, they wind up being a self-correcting problem.
No, absolutely. I do think addiction is a bad, the thing I hold belief, and I think Robert Stark also has this ideal as well, why we relate on this, is that, for instance, there's an avant-garde writer by the name of Peter Sotos. He's on 9 Bandit Books. And since the 90s, he's been published by Jim Goad, and he just writes about child porn, avant-garde. But he does this to piss people off and to agitate and to test your will, kind of like shock art. It's like that old metal band Anal Nut, right? They try to be offensive as possible. And I guess the alt-right is doing that. You might want to consider that shallow, but the point of the matter is it's this strange avant-garde artsy thing happening. And Robert Stark, when he talks about defense of the Delta thing, or the Gammas.
Well, I'm writing a book. I don't want to give away the details, but Pillator, would you say the main character is a Gamma?
Yeah, because a lot of this seems to be inflicting with Robert Stark's future work, which seems to be very controversial, and I think a lot of people on the alt-right, which Robert Stark associates, would be offended by that, and maybe some kind of alt-left who you would say is this kind of decadence would accept it. However, at the same time, I guess this is not about the point because, I'm very cautious about these things, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would say if you're writing a book about a Gamma, it's going to be about how all the women want him and how he's the most kick-ass, badass dude in the world, and he is morally superior to absolutely everybody. But it's also going to have zero self-awareness or understanding of humanity whatsoever. That's how you write the Gamma.
It sounds like my character in the book.
Man, why are you writing a book about the devil?
It's like I'm almost at 100,000 words.
Well, again, I guess if you don't know myself, personally, I've had a YouTube career and I was introduced on the Stark Truth, and I write about an ideology of Asian Aryanism, which basically assumes that a small niche of people, of Eurasians in those liberal cities, would have to make the same alt-right ethno-state ideal that Richard Spencer does. And of course, that doesn't mean world domination or supremacy, anything. It just refers to such small people. Now, ironically,
it's not like the Kalergi plan you're talking about.
Exactly. It's not like the Kalergi plan at all, and it's not for decadence. It's just trying to make these people who, on average, people argue that Eurasians or Hapas have mental problems. The purpose is counseling.
Can a Eurasian hypothetically be Gamma?
Well, trying to not be like Elliot Rodgers in a country full of Elliot Rodgers.
They have problems is because their fathers are losers and their mothers hate their own race. It's not actually anything genetic. It's that a lot of Eurasians come from very messed up, fetishistic-based relationships. Not all of them. Frickin' awesome. And even if you did come from that, that's not an excuse to be a loser. Get over yourself.
And that's basically exactly what I'm saying as a representative of that. And I'm all for overcoming a loserdom. Now, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if Robert Stark would have to agree on that. And it seems like the
there's
debate
this
was about that.
psychosocial narrative we've talked about in the show.
Oh, Eric Erickson.
Yeah, Eric Erickson, psychosocial stage. So there's the people who win at the psychosocial narrative, playing by society's rules. The people who lose at it. Then there's a few people who manage to win at the psychosocial narrative by playing by their own rules. And I guess you could call those people sigmas. I don't know.
Well, that's a topic on its own for psychology.
Yeah,
but it's this ideal that to relate to this, it has to do with, look, in psychosocial development, if you don't answer certain questions, you're probably going to become somewhere on that hierarchy. And that has a lot to do with that. You know, like Andy Nowicki says in Heart Killer, you got to get in a time machine, and the nerd suddenly becomes the alpha. You know, he tricks on that. Or basically, you live all through life, and in this, I don't mean to sound cliche, capitalist society where the institutions create the snowflake generation because no one's challenging them. Everything's being enabled, and everything is being, you know, everything's a Disneyland vacation resort. Nothing's being challenged, and people go through life, and then they die, and everything's just row, 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 merry, merry, life is but a dream. It's like, this is why I always call out, stop making your life seem like you're the protagonist to an animes no one's watching. Just study up on your psychology, you know?
Well, you know, listen, I need to get going soon. So, Stark, I was wondering, do you have any last words? Anything you want to sum things up with?
I think we pretty much covered everything that the show is focused on. We have these other topics like the psychosocial narrative. That could be a whole other... I mean, that's a topic for a whole other show, but I would just like to thank Aurini and to thank the audience for listening and to check out my website, Stark Truth Radio, and we have a lot of information on these topics.
Yeah. And I also go on...
List it down below. And Pill Eater, your website?
It's www.asianarianism.com, but mostly on my YouTube at youtube.com/PillEater. Please subscribe. I always do videos like this and podcasts. So, yep.
All right, and I'll just finish up by saying, folks, stop worshiping porn stars. Just because some of them are smart doesn't mean that they all have something useful to say.
Harriet Sugar Cookie's a problem. I don't like her either, but...
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for being on, guys. Deus Volt.